Jules, she and they pronouns, and has called the Pacific Northwest home for the last 12 years. After a long soul search and a short 3-day bus ride, she used to think she could save the world through social work, but decided the world would be better served through food, music, and words. She hopes to lend her voice to those who have been silenced or shut out from dominant or popular culture, and redefining what is considered normal. Amen, hallelujah. Her major goal is to finish the YA novel she's working on and to get all the other stories out of her head. Jules, everybody.
Yeah. That was a promise. You kept your promise.
So Jessica said she was going to dance. She did. So I'm like happy with that. So.
Go, Jess.
All right, so thank you, first of all, to Adam for having me here again. Thank you for all of you for being here. Yeah, I'm just going to get into it. Here we go. For those who don't know me, I'm a 70s baby, raised on disco and funk, but I love classical. I have no idea how that happened. Blame it on movies and TV. Fame, to be exact. More so the series than the movie. Yes, the same one with Debbie Allen declaring, "You got big dreams, you want fame, well right here is where you start paying." In sweat. So the movie came out in 80, the series in 82. The dancing didn't resonate with me as much as playing music did. There was a definite lack of black bodies in the music room, as I recall. So I guess they were all dancing with Debbie. From the first time I saw the show, I was obsessed with Laurie Singer, aka Julie Mueller, and her cello. I also had an unacknowledged thing for girls. Please see the crush on Joe from Facts of Life. But that is another matter. The cello is a beautiful instrument, and for me, it was the best of all the stringed instruments. For those who haven't been near an orchestra or a stringed instrument, you know when a cello is being played. The tone resonates inside of you, and you feel it in the core of your being. Violins are tinny sounding to me, and they are the first thing you hear because they are mainly the melody. Viola's pretty much lost, especially if the composer's a jerk who doesn't know how to use it. Bass is too damn big and plays the same 5 notes that repeat themselves. I'm exaggerating here, I know, but there is some truth in it. Think of it like a 4-part choir, which I was a part of as well. The sopranos were the bitchy, mean girls that got all the good parts. The altos sang the raggedy-ass harmony. Tenors were the meat and bread. And the bass was just cool because they had the deepest voice, if you were lucky to have one. I was starting 5th grade, yet at another new school, which, what's better, it was Atlanta. We had just moved back down from New York, my mom finishing off her chemotherapy from breast cancer the year before. After continually being looked at like some sort of alien for having both a hard Bronx accent and using complete sentences, the only thing that kept me sane was music. There were lessons being offered with the option of band or orchestra, and bonus, you could get out of class. The lessons, the music lessons, were taught during math, and I was dead awful at fractions. So my 10-year-old brain thought it would be a perfect opportunity to learn cello. I went home and told my mom. She had known about my obsession with cello. Hell, I'd been babbling about it for the past year or so. And I didn't ask for much, I thought. Just a strawberry shortcake doll and a cello. Nothing major. About a week or so later, my mom picked me up from school. We didn't have a car, so she had to borrow her sister's. And asking to borrow something from her sister could be problematic depending on the time of day or week. Something was going on. Mom didn't come to schools unless something was wrong or there were conferences, and I tried extremely hard not to give her a reason to come to school, because a less than favorable outcome meant my ass would be beat. Also, this was an event. Mom rarely asked her sister for anything, especially since we were staying with her and she was quick to remind us of it. She drove in the opposite direction of home and said nothing to me about where we were going, only to say we were going to get your instrument for school. I stayed quiet, hoping beyond hope that A, I wasn't dreaming, and that B, I wouldn't do something that would make her turn around. Sometime later, we were in a place called Decatur, in front of a shop called Emile Baron. The instruments hanging in the shop were mesmerizing, all sizes and various hues of red. It was all potential to me. And then I saw it, the cello in its stand on its own, proud, looking like it had a spotlight on it. "Let's get you measured," said the clerk. "Measured? No need, I'll take that one right there, thank you." Pointing to that beautiful instrument. I remember the disappointment and shock when the clerk brought down a very large looking violin. I was hurt. Ma pulled me aside and said, "You can't ride the bus with a cello, so this is the next best thing." I felt like that kid from A Christmas Story when everyone tells him they'll shoot your eye out at the pocket. Sigh. A viola. I had never even heard of it before that day. I felt cheated, lost. I couldn't embarrass my mother by saying no to it, so I submitted and was measured for a large violin. But it really wasn't a violin. A viola looks like a fat violin, but it has the same strings as a cello, and its tone is deeper than a violin. Still, not a cello though. I was grateful. I remembered my manners before they were remembered for me, and said thank you, leaving with my new rented viola, safe in its case, along with the rosin and bow. When I got home, I stayed downstairs in the living room to get acquainted with my new instrument. I even tried putting it between my legs to maybe play it like a cello. Yeah, but that was no good. I was stuck with this thing. Miss Miller, my teacher, was patient, but I was definitely not. I wanted to learn everything at once. I wanted to play Beethoven and Bach and Mozart, not hot cross buns and Farah Jacques. That first year was hard, but I had to slow down and learn. I discovered that the viola was much like the alto, which was also my part in choir. I never seemed to get away from being the support staff, or so I thought. As I learned more, we began to play difficult pieces. We played those wonderful hits like Rocky Top Tennessee and Allegro in D. By this time, I had read about Mozart and Brahms, but my teacher never went for those composers that featured viola. I was frustrated, but I still found the peace in creating and connecting those notes and half notes and making that music. When I was in 8th grade, we began working on Vivaldi's Spring, and my teacher let me play another supporting role. Thanks. We didn't get to play the cool stuff like, I don't know, Star Wars or Laura's theme from Dr. Zhivago. Still, I loved to play. When no one was looking, I would also steal into the orchestra room and play on the cello. Viola is one of the few instruments that plays music in alto clef. Others usually go for treble, which is higher, or bass clef, which is lower. At the time, I could sight read, and it was easy to translate the bass clef notes into alto in my head so I could read and play the cello part. On one occasion, I was goofing off with the cello and didn't notice my string teacher had walked in and was watching me play. There were those teachers you just did not fuck with, and Miss Miller was one of those for me. Not that I was afraid of her, but she had knowledge I wanted. She was short, thin, and wiry, and wanted perfection in music, and knew when she heard it. I had known her for 3 years, and she taught me everything about viola. I was just sight reading, playing what I could, holding that cello, remembering what she told the cellist about holding the bow. With me having more experience with a viola, I could tell the difference in the sound quality and the weight of the bow. It reminded me of pulling an oar in water, but I was doing it. I was playing my beloved cello. Finally, I caught Mrs. Miller's reflection in the mirror, and I stopped dead thinking I was in deep trouble. "Keep playing," was all she said to me, and walked to her desk to look for some papers. It was my last year in middle school, and we had the option of applying to magnet schools for high school. Atlanta had this award-winning program at Northside, and as much as I wanted to go and keep on playing, I was told that music didn't make money. And I didn't want to teach. So I put my viola down and went to Grady, which had the state-of-the-art communications program. State-of-the-art as in new Apple Macintosh computers. I miss my viola something awful, but I wouldn't play at home out of fear for disrupting the house. As I prepared to begin my high school career, I got a call from a guy named Stan. Now, Stan and I were in the same grade in middle school, he having transferred in from out of state and had bumped me actually from first chair when we went to school together. Now he was at Northside. He was a good kid though, and I remember his viola was gorgeous. It was the sandy color, which is not what I had seen before. I wasn't jealous, I was just fascinated. See, mine was bigger because I was pushing a 17-inch by the time I was headed to high school, and everyone knows that bigger's better. And mine was the color of a dark, rich honey. He asked me to transfer to Northside. He said that there was a chair open. And we may have played an orchestra together, but that was pretty much the extent of it. He'd actually gotten my phone number from my best friend who also went to Northside and was in the marching band there playing quads. And ironically, I had hung out at Northside over the summer during summer camp and knew the layout of the school and seen the orchestra rooms. Absolutely next level with private soundproof practice spaces. But I told him no. I was studying communications and there was no future in music for me. To this day, I regret that decision. After school, I didn't fare as well as I thought I would. I tried joining the drum section of the marching band, and that was okay once I got past the sexist rhetoric bullshit, and I was accepted as a little sister. I didn't have this problem in orchestra. I may have played a supporting role, but I was never treated as second class. I transferred out of Grady and into a private boarding school and took my viola with me, hoping to practice or at least get back some of what I had. Funny enough, there was no orchestra to speak of at that school, but the band director made it a point to be as inclusive as she could, even going as far to take parts written for woodwinds and rewrite them for me. I was grateful, and we developed a weird kind of friendship. She taught me how to play both the bass clarinet and the French horn in 1 year. I liked them both, but I found myself going back to my viola. I had fallen in love with the courage, you see, and the sound when I played or when I heard it felt like home. I only stayed at school for that year and left abruptly. So abruptly that I had left my viola. There was a tuition balance, and we couldn't pay it. So my viola went toward the bill. I tried to stop thinking about playing, about those dulcet tones, so to speak, and I threw myself into hip hop. That was easy, really, as it was the early 90s and the golden age, talking Salt and Pepper, MC Light, Latifah, Wu-Tang Clan, to name a few. I loved the beats, I loved the bass line, the things I needed to hear but didn't know I needed. But I wanted both. Over the years, I'd heard some rock and pop bands using stringed instruments to add to their songs, but I had not heard of any hip-hop crossovers until Mary Ben-Ali was performing on BET's 106 in Park. That sparked a little interest, And I began to long for my viola again, collecting Mozart's CDs and playing them over and over until they wore out. I loved my soundtracks as well, and just soon discovered Hans Zimmerman, Howard Shore, John Williams. 3 years ago, I was goofing off on Facebook, as we are wont to do when we should be doing other things. And I found Black Violin, and I saw the video for A flat. I was, as my children would say, shook. See, for years, the sound of classical brings me to tears. I hear Yo-Yo Ma, and I'm silently crying those tears of loss. It was different with Black Violin, because I realized I could put hip-hop and classical on the same shelf. Hell, even in my ears. And I wasn't strange. There were others, and they performed just the night before. It took me 3 years to get tickets. And last night, literally, my wife, my dad, and my best friend, we all went to see him. And it was epic. I think it was the most I've ever seen anyone move at a concert I've attended in Portland. And the crowd was almost on beat.
Yeah.
I was a little worried, though, that my dad wouldn't like it because it was hip hop. But there he was, hands in the air, waving like he just don't care. But that's what music is supposed to do, bring people together. I might not get to tell the story to Black Violin in person, but I wish I could hug Kev and Will, the artists that make up Black Violin. They inspired me to go out and buy a viola and play again. Well, at least take some lessons.